Hi everyone, and thanks for clicking on the video. If you watched the first video in this series, you'll know that the sight that I bought to put on my Proforce is a Shibuya Ultima. It is secondhand, and what I noticed when I had a good close look at it is that the second and third axes have been mucked around with a little bit. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is using the PSE bow vise to reset the second and third axis on the sight back to neutral, and then I can put the sight on the Proforce, put the Proforce in the bow vise, and then set the second and third axis so that they are correct for my bow. I will be doing close-ups with the camera so that you guys can see what it is that I'm doing, and I don't think it'll take too long, so let's get into it. So the first thing that we have to do, obviously, after attaching the bow vise to the table, is using the adjustments that are on the bow vise, set it up so the bubbles are 100% level. You'll notice I've already attached the sight block to the thing. It's just to save a little bit of time. So the bubble on this one here looks like it's pretty much spot on. And then the bubble up here needs to move that way a little bit. So if I bring you guys over quickly, you'll see the bubbles are all where they should be. So the next thing that I need to do is put the sight into its block. So as long as the sight knob itself is seated in one of these indents properly, the way that the block works, the sight will be in the same orientation regardless of how deep or how shallow it is into the sight block itself. So the next thing we need to have a look at now is where the bubble on the sight is sitting. So I'll move the camera and I'll show you. So as you can see, the bubble on the sight is sitting over to the right of the screen a little bit, when we really needed to be dead center in between those black marks. So on this particular sight, the way that we adjust the orientation of the bubble over here is with this bolt up here and the one that's in there. So by loosening those, you should be able to move this whole block up and down, which will then adjust the orientation of the bubble. So as you can see, now that I've loosened off those screws, you can move the bubble to wherever it is that you need it to be. Obviously we want to try and get it in the center as best as we can. So I'm going to muck around with that, get it done, and then show you guys how it looks. Alright, so as you can see, we've now got that bubble 100% where it needs to be. And having a look at the other bubbles on the bow vise, none of them have moved, so I'm pretty confident that that is back to neutral position. So I'll just tighten those bolts up. Hopefully I don't move the bubble. And then we'll adjust the next axis. Okay, so that's the second axis now set on the sight. The next thing to look at is the third axis. Now the third axis adjustment is basically a case of when you have the bow level in your hand and you're shooting on flat ground, second axis is pretty much all you need. But if you're going to be using the bow to shoot uphill and downhill, as in doing 3D or field archery, you're going to have to make sure that your third axis is set as well. So basically what that means is that even though the bubble is level at the moment, If I tilt the bow up or down, as if I'm going to do an up or a downhill shot, I need to make an adjustment to the sight so that the bubble still stays in the center. Now I'm going to move the sight and the camera at the same time to try and give you an idea of what happens or what it is that I'm talking about. So hopefully this all works out pretty well and can illustrate my point. So I'm going to take the bow vise and start tilting it forward as if I'm doing a downhill shot. And as you can see, the bubble starts moving over to the right of the screen. And that's a problem, because now if I try to correct for that, I'm going to be canting my bow, which means my arrow is not going to be coming out straight. So the way to fix that is this sight actually has a third axis adjustment built into it, and the way that that works is with these two screws here. So basically I need to loosen them off slightly and then move the scope housing towards the camera a little bit, and that should bring the bubble back into the middle. So let's do that now. So if I move the scope housing down a bit, we'll see that the bubble now goes into the center of the bubble tube. So once I'm happy with where it is, I can cinch these up a little bit. And then just double check that it's where I want it to be, and it looks like it is. So then to show you guys that that's a necessary thing that needs to be done, I will bring the sight back up to level and I'll pan with the camera, and we should see the bubble stay in the middle all the way up back to the neutral position. So as you can see, the bubble is still in the center. So that's my second and my third axis set back to neutral on this sight block. And the next thing that I'll need to do is put the sight on the bow and redo all of that to make sure that it's perfect on the bow. Alright, so now that I have the sight on the bow, I need to go through that whole process again just to make sure that the bubble is perfectly set for the bow itself. So as you can see, I've got the bow sitting in the PSE bow vise and everything has been leveled off again. All the bubbles on the bow vise are level and the bubble on the sight is level in that I've set it to the center of the bubble tube. But I haven't made any more adjustments to the sight itself since I've put it on the bow. That's what I'm going to be looking at now. So one of the tools that I use to help me with that is one of these little yellow bubble blocks. It's got a bubble there. It's meant to be clipped onto the string, but you can also use this side of it pressed up against a known flat surface on the bow, and you can reference your bubble off of that. So the idea being that if this is on a known flat surface of the bow and the bubble is level, the bow itself should be level. And then looking at the bubble on the sight to see if that matches up with the bubble on this. If that's the case, then the second axis should be set. And if your second axis is good, then you can use the bow vise to lean the bow forward or backwards, as in an up or downhill shot. And you can verify that your bubble is still level when your bow is at that angle. So let's give it a go. So here you can see the sight is sitting on the bow and I do have the bubble nice and level, and I'll show you the bubbles on the bow vise as well to show you that those are nice and level. Alright, so as you can see, the sight is level on the bow, and if we use this little yellow level block, You can see there that that is level as well, which means our second axis on the bow is correct. So as for the third axis, what we'll need to do is tilt the bow forward and make sure the bubble stays where it is. So as we go forward, you'll see the bubble stays in the center. So I'm pretty confident that my second and third axis is correct on the sight. As for the first axis, I usually just eyeball that and it works out well enough. And so there you have it. That's the sight all set up as far as the bubble is concerned. First, second and third axis. Pretty happy with where those things are now. Again, if I do find that I need to make any adjustments later on to any of that, just follow the same procedure that I did to do it the first time. It turns out that after setting it all up on the PSC bow vise with a sight attached to the bow vise, I didn't actually have to make any adjustments to the sight once I attached it to the bow. So that's a bit of a testament to the tolerances in the machining of the riser and the sight. And then of course, having to use this little yellow bubble tool, it's a very handy thing to have. You can pick them up for not a lot of money. They come with another attachment that actually goes onto the arrow. So later on, I'll be using that same tool to make sure that the rest is set up correctly as well. So that's where we're going to end this one. In the next one, I'm going to be looking at doing the D-loop and putting the rest on and then making sure that that is set up correctly as well. So that's it for today. Leave a like or a comment below. And if you haven't already done so, click on the subscribe button and hit that little bell icon so that you get a notification each time I upload a new video. Hope you guys all have a great week, and remember, just do good shots.